Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. I'm Hashim Ali Khan. Previous videos I have completed the problems on EA deduction under section 16(2) and HRA exemption under section 10 subsection 13A. So the allowances, the topic going on are allowances. Allowances are the fixed monetary benefit, monetary amount which is given by the employer to the employee for a specific purpose. These allowances may be increased or may be decreased or may be withdrawn by the employer. Now the question will arise, according to the Income Tax Act, whether allowances are taxable or not. So all the allowances are classified into fully taxable allowances, fully tax-free allowances, and partly taxable, partly exempted allowances. So I have given in the previous video the list of all allowances which are fully taxable, like dearness allowance, additional DA, city compensatory allowance, project allowance, then lunch allowance, medical allowance, etc. So these are the allowances which are completely taxable. So whenever in the problem you come across this allowance, you should take it as fully taxable. Second, fully exempted allowance. Few allowances are specified by Income Tax Act where allowances are completely exempted, not taxable at all. Example, foreign allowance given to government employees who are posted abroad. Similarly, the allowances given to High Court and Supreme Court judges. Similarly, the allowance given to chairman and members of UPSC. Like that, only 4-5 examples are given where allowances are completely exempted. Remaining allowances are partly taxable, partly exempted. In that we have discussed about EA deduction, entertainment allowance deduction. EA may be given either for official purpose or EA can be given for personal purpose. If nothing is given, we assume entertainment allowance is given for personal use. Then for personal purpose, then EA deduction will be given under section 16(2). Only for government employees. Only for government employees, this EA deduction will be given to the list of the following three amounts: 20% of salary actually received or fixed amount of 5,000. For non-government employees, EA reduction will not be allowed. Now HRA exemption. Many cases the employer will give an allowance called HRA, house rent allowance, to the employees. Now Income Tax Act says HRA exemption will be given under section 10(13)(a) only if rent is paid. If the assessee is staying in his own house or in a relative house where he is not paying any rent, so no exemption will be allowed. For giving the exemption, employees are classified into employees staying in 4 metropolitan cities or other towns: Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata and Chennai. These are 4 metropolitan cities and other towns. For 4 metropolitan cities, the exemption is list of the following 3 amounts: actual HRA received, second, rent paid minus 10% of salary, third, 50% of salary for 4 metro and 40% for other towns. Salary, the meaning of salary will change from provision to provision. For EA deduction, salary means only basic, nothing else. For HRA exemption, salary means basic pay plus DA if it enters for retirement benefit, plus commission if it is based on fixed percentage of turnover achieved. So these are the provisions so far we have discussed in the previous videos. See, the problems are based on the provisions. Again and again, if you watch these videos, if you listen the lecture, then only you will become perfect on the provisions. Directly if you go to the problems, you will never be able to understand. So my suggestion, watch all these videos of allowances twice, thrice, then only you will get the command. In this video, I am going to explain you the remaining allowances. Few more allowances are there. And this marks the end of the topic of allowances. In the next video, we'll start the next topic called perquisite. what is perquisite, what are the different types of perquisite, what is the taxability of perquisites, that we'll discuss in the next video. Now, in this video, some other miscellaneous allowances which are given. Other allowances. For the following allowances, the actual amount spent is exempted. Actual amount spent is exempted. That means the unspent amount is taxable. For example, the company has given to Mr. X, an employee, 10,000 rupees as an allowance for a particular purpose. For a particular purpose, allowance is given 10,000. Now, out of 10,000, 8,000 rupees the employee has spent. The remaining 2,000 unspent amount is taxable. Unspent amount is taxable. So, which are the allowances on which actual amount spent is exempted? Unspent amount is taxable. The unspent amount is taxable. Example of those allowances are uniform allowance, helper allowance, daily allowance, conveyance allowance, transfer allowance, academic allowance. These are the few examples of those allowances in which unspent amount is taxable. For example, uniform allowance. If in the coming problems, it will be given, the employer has given uniform allowance 10,000 rupees to the employee as a uniform allowance, and the employee has spent 8,000 rupees on uniform. Out of 10,000 rupees received, 8,000 he has spent. So how much unspent? 2,000. That 2,000 is taxable. If in the problem nothing is given, only uniform allowance is given, that may make the assumption that the whole amount was spent on uniform, nothing is unspent, so no tax. That is the provision. Now note, if details of actual amount spent is not given, then make an assumption that employee has spent the entire amount of allowance received, and as such actual amount received becomes fully exempted. Just now what I told. If no details are given, no explanation is given, only allowance given by the employer is given. So we make the assumption that the employee has spent the entire amount, nothing is unspent, so whole amount is exempted from tax for these allowances. The next allowance is children education allowance. Sometimes the employer will give an allowance to the employee for the education of their children. The children of the employee are studying, they are getting the education. The employee is paying the fees of the children. In that case, sometimes employer will give an allowance called children education allowance. Now, what are the provisions regarding children education allowance? Very frequently in the coming problems, this allowance will come. So remember the provisions. Least of the following two amount is exempted. Least of the following two amount is exempted. Actual allowance received, first one. Second, rupees 100 per month per child for a maximum of 2 children. Income Tax Act says exempted amount is rupees 100 per month. 100 rupees per month means 1200 rupees per annum. For 1 year, 1200 rupees for one child. For a maximum of 2 children, so 1200 into 2, 2400. Maximum amount is 2400 you will get here for 2 children. For example, the employer has given for 4 children. Employer has given the allowances for 4 children. The total allowance received by the employee is rupees 10,000. 10,000 rupees is the total children education allowance received for 4 children during the year. Income Tax Act says actual allowance received 10,000, will take it here. Now restriction, limit, ceiling is rupees 100 per month per child for a maximum of 2 children. Rupees 100 per month means 1200 per annum. So for one child 1200, for 2 children 2400. Only 2400 you will get the exemption. So out of 10,000 rupees children education allowance received, 2,400 is exempted. Remaining amount is taxable. That is the provision of children education allowance. In the next video, we'll solve the problems also on children education allowance. The concept will be clear. Next, children hostel allowance. Second, one more allowance. Sometimes the employer will give a special allowance to the employee for children hostel. Suppose the employee's children are staying in a hostel for getting the education, and employee is paying the hostel fees. In that case, the employer may pay some amount as children hostel allowance. Income Tax Act says least of the following two will be allowed as exemption. So actual amount received, actual allowance received, or rupees 300 per month per child for a maximum of 2 children, just like children education. In children education, we have rupees 100 per month, whereas children hostel allowance, we have 300 per month per child for a maximum of 2 children. For example, employees' children, 3 children are staying in hostel. An employer pays during the year 30,000 rupees as children hostel allowance. Employee has received 30,000 rupees as children hostel allowance from the employer. Income Tax Act says actual amount received 30,000 or 300 per month. 300 per month means 3,600 per annum. 3,600 per annum per child for a maximum of 2 children. So 3,600 into 2, 7,200. The maximum ceiling is 7,200. The actual hostel allowance received here 30,000 and ceiling exemption given 7,200. So out of 30,000, 7,200 is exempted. Remaining amount is taxable for children hostel allowance. So we have completed children education allowance, children hostel allowance. Next one is truck driver allowance. Some of the employer will give to the employee truck driver allowance. For them, the least of the following two will be allowed as exemption. What are the two? 70% of allowance received or rupees 10,000 per month. 10,000 per month. Least of these two will be allowed as exemption. Next comes transport allowance. Very frequently in the problems you will come across these allowance. Transport allowance for traveling between the residence and the place of work. Transport allowance is given for reaching from the place of residence to the place of work. If the person is normal, fully taxable. When traveling allowance is given by the employer to the employee for traveling from residence to the place of work, it is fully taxable. Whereas if the employee is physically handicapped or blind person, rupees 3,200 per month is exempted. Rupees 3,200 per month is exempted for a person who is physically handicapped or blind person. Now special note for any other allowance, if there is no provision in the act about the exemption, then it should be taken as fully taxable allowance. Whatever allowances we have discussed so far are not the exhaustive list of allowances. Any type of allowance may come. So if any other allowance appears which is not discussed so far or which is not specified in the act, that means that allowance will be fully taxable. Fully taxable. So this is only examples of allowances which are given by the act. That for these allowances, these are the provisions. If any other allowance other than these allowances are given by the employer to the employee, it will be fully taxable. So this is the complete explanation about the head allowances and the tax treatment provisions for exemption, deduction for the allowances. Next video, we'll solve few more problems on allowances, and that marks the end of the topic allowances.